Hello and welcome back to another episode of Loud and Opinionated. Going back to the old school look for you video watchers. Audio listeners, you won't really care. It's not going to affect you. But if you're watching me talk to you, I'll look a little different. I recorded yesterday's episode. It's the biggest games of 2019. That's already up, and I hope you're listening to it and you're having a good time with it. There are games that I missed, and I understand that. That's the problem when you do these lists. There's some games I, in the video, almost missed Crash Team Racing. I caught it at the very end, but you know that's the issue you run into because there's so many good games coming out. There's so many good movies coming out. It's such a great time to be alive. So if I miss some from this list, I get it. If there's some that should be there that aren't, I understand. There's a lot of movies coming out. There's a lot of games. I'm only one man. There's really nothing else to get into housekeeping-wise. I've pretty much said everything that we're working on. It's coming. All the cool stuff is coming very soon in 2019. It's weeks away. Another year. Another year of sadness. I'm just kidding. So let's get it off on the right foot here. Let's talk about the most anticipated, the biggest movies to me in 2019. Now, these aren't going to be a particular order. There's no number of like, this isn't my top 10 list, this isn't my top 15, whatever. These are just movies that I'm really excited about that are coming in 2019. First up, let's talk about the movie that's coming in January. So, a January release date does scare me a little bit because this movie seems interesting, and we're seeing he's finally got some wins now, and it's finally working out for him. I'm, of course, talking about the movie Glass. That I don't know. I'm seeing the trailers of it. It's not blowing me away, but it's also. It's doing enough, I think, to get my interest. If you're not familiar with what Glass is, it's the sequel to Split and Unbreakable. I don't know. I'm sure that M. Night Shyamalan is going to play this off as this was his plan all along. I honestly think he had a sequel for Glass, or sequel for Unbreakable that he wanted to do. Try to do some other movies. People were like, okay, maybe this guy isn't as genius as we thought he was. Had some really bad movies. Finally has some hits again, so he's like, well, maybe we finally make this sequel, and I just shoehorn in a cameo at the end of this movie, which I thought was great. Like, the Bruce Willis cameo at the end of Split was pretty cool. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I didn't think that was an awesome reveal. But it just, the trailers are doing enough, but I don't know. With a January release date, that worries me, because usually when movies come out in January, they're bad movies. Everybody, that's the joke, is, you know, November, December, those are your Oscar bait, like, best picture type movies, and then January is where all the slog is, where it's all the bad stuff that just gets put to January, and then February you get back into it, into the better movies, you know, and that bothers me, because it looks like it could be a fun movie, but I'm wondering why it's in January. Is it because it's a bad movie, or is it because the studio just doesn't, they still don't believe in M. Night Shyamalan, and they're kind of just like, well, if we put it in January, we won't lose a lot, you know? And it's January, so I mean, even if it does well, and say it breaks a January record, it's January. So it probably doesn't need to make a lot of money, box office-wise, to be successful in the month of January. And honestly, the more I look at it, the more I'm also wondering, where else do you put it? Do you put it in February? You got to be also conscious of when Marvel movies have come out, because you can't put this thing in March or April, because it's going to get buried by Avengers and Captain America, which, believe me, we'll get to and we'll talk about. But it's just interesting that it's an interesting decision to put it in January, but also I think it's maybe just you got to get this movie out and you got to put it in the right spot. That's probably really that's it. So next up on my list, it's going to be a little Marvel heavy, I'll be honest. Next up on my list is Captain Marvel. I I never really read the Captain Marvel comics, and that's not a deterrent for me with Marvel movies. I mean, that's kind of their shtick, is they get characters that you're not necessarily familiar with, that you don't really know as well, and they make awesome movies out of it. And sure, there are Guardians of the Galaxy fans out there before the movies, but majority of people didn't even have that movie or know what those characters were on their radar. And that movie made gangbusters, and it was great. Both movies are great. So that doesn't deter me from seeing this movie. I think no matter what, I'm going to enjoy Captain Marvel. I think it's interesting that DC beat Marvel to the female-led superhero movie. I always kind of chuckle at that, mostly because when you look at Disney as a whole, as a company, they're very much more progressive, and that kind of surprised me a little bit that they got beat there. And I mean, they technically beat DC to a black superhero movie both times, because Blade and Black Panther. But it's an interesting move, and I love the fact that it's in the 90s, and I love that. But it's also kind of, this is the problem when you add in these newer characters to the lore, because then you have to backtrack, and then you have to, like, it's almost like you're writing yourself into a corner where you have to figure out, okay, they are in this universe, but it's a prequel in the 90s before all this stuff had happened. She's friends with Nick Fury, but why didn't Nick Fury call her before Infinity War? Why did it take the third Avengers movie? Like, all the stuff that happened in New York in the first Avengers movie, and all the stuff that's happened in any of these movies. If she's as powerful as they say she is, why not give her a ring and save everybody some time? But that's honestly a nitpick. I don't care. I still think the movie's going to be fun, and we're getting more of Nick Fury, and I think they're going to kind of build up on his backstory, which I that's always what I've wanted, because I love Sam Jackson. And Brie Larson's good. She's a very good actress. She's an Oscar winner, so she will bring it. Jude Law will bring it. I think they have a really strong cast. As I said, I'm not like super ingratiated with Captain Marvel and her lore, but they've done a good enough job with their other movies where I don't know anything about these characters, and I still came out enjoying myself. So I'm excited for that movie. I think it'll do well, and I'm wondering how it's going to tie into Endgame, because they're going to have to. I mean, it's pretty obvious where they're going with this. I mean, they had the Easter egg for Captain Marvel at the end of Infinity War. By the way, I'm spoiling this movie, but you've had a year to see it, so I don't care. So they tease her, so she's obviously going to be involved some way at some point, and that'll be interesting how they do that with an after credit scene. She'll probably get the pager or whatever. Continuing the theme of March, another release in March that I didn't know was coming in March, and by the time this posts, when this goes live, the trailer won't be out yet, but it is coming on Christmas, so a few days later, you'll get the trailer for Jordan Peele's next movie, Us. Jordan Peele is doing something that's a little weird. I didn't expect Jordan Peele to be like a big voice in the horror genre, but thriller horror genre, but after the success of Get Out and how good of a movie that is, I'm totally in with whatever he's doing here. And they've done a good job with this movie, because I had heard about it, but it totally didn't cross my mind. And then he posted on Twitter I think last week, the first image of it. And I was like, oh yeah, he's working on another project, another like horror thriller type project. And it's interesting, because I think it's going to be very similar to, because I was reading an article, and I want to say like 2 weeks ago, because I finally got to see Sorry to Bother You. Great movie. Look out for that on my best of 2018 movies, on loudopinionated.com. They talked about how he likes to write these social, him and Boots Riley, who wrote Sorry to Bother You, they're doing a different approach to their movies, and they're very much social commentaries. And what Jordan Peele is working on are more social horror, and that's what very, very much what Get Out was, and that's maybe what we're gonna see with Us. And that's the cool thing about this. Until this trailer comes out, we know nothing about this movie, and I think that's the most intriguing thing. I mean, the image itself is it's two gloves holding a big pair of scissors. It is. I don't know what's going on, and if you're listening to this live, you won't know for another few days, and that's exciting. That you don't get that a lot with the internet and social media. We don't get a lot of things clipped close to the vest. You know, a lot of things get spoiled, a lot of things get leaked. So I'm wondering how this is going to work, and I hope that he doesn't hit a sophomore slump. And I think he's going to keep making awesome movies, and I'm stoked, man. If it's anything like Get Out, holy crap, it's going to be impressive to see him have back-to-back big-time winners like that. Next up, this is interesting because thanks to the success of It, which I will talk about later, the success of It has kind of given Stephen King adaptations a resurgence because now there's a Pet Sematary remake, and I imagine if this does well, they're going to keep doing this. So this is kind of a weird, it's like late 80s, early 90s, like resurgence of Stephen King adaptations. I've seen the trailer. I'm intrigued because I think they're taking out some elements. I think they're taking out the Indian burial ground trope, which good. I don't really have an opinion on that because I'm not Native American or anything. I just think that it's kind of a lame trope. It's kind of been overused, and it's just such a weird cop out. I remember listening to the Dead Meat podcast, and they were talking about the tropes of the Native American burial ground. I agree with a lot of what they were saying. It's just it's not a good. It's time we kind of put that to rest because it's as storytelling wise, it's not a good device. I don't think. I think it's just like, what about these Native Americans are just people. They're not like mystical people, you know what I mean? Like they're not wizards. But it's going to be interesting. I think they did take some interesting choices. I don't know. It's something I'm wondering why it's an April release and why not later in the year. But I think that might just because they want to get out of the way of It Chapter 2 because the first remake, the first movie, why am I having trouble saying that? The first movie made so much money and such a big hit that they're kind of just like, all right, we got to space out these Stephen King adaptations. Kind of like what Marvel does with their movies. And of course, now we got to talk about it. Avengers Endgame. Wow. I cannot understate how ready I am for this movie. This is a movie that when I saw Avengers Infinity War, I saw it 3 times in theaters. And every time I saw it, it still felt like the first time. And every time I saw it, it was something that was so big. It was the first time I'd been in a movie. And this is what's funny, is I thought this was happening with the first Avengers movie, with the second Avengers movie, maybe even with Captain America Civil War when they were throwing all these characters together. But it wasn't until Infinity War when I got out of that movie and seeing it 3 times with 3 different groups of people, I've started to realize something. This was the first time in my life that I've been a part of an event like this. And you could say there's a lot of other movies, and the metaphor I'm going to use is the first Star Wars. This feels like a New Hope level event of like so many people are seeing this. This is such a change in how we perceive like these kind of movies, and it was a moment in time, and it was so impactful in everybody's life. Like everybody was talking about this movie, everybody was seeing this movie. This movie made $1 billion in like 3 days. That's probably not the real number. Don't quote me on that. Obviously, I'm paraphrasing. But it felt like the first time Star Wars came out. And that idea of like, this is something entirely new. This is something different. And this is, you know, I wasn't alive for that. So this was something that I felt like was happening to me. Where for the first time in my life, I'm like, holy cow, I remember where I was. I remember the movie theater. I remember being there and seeing this movie 3 times. And that, every single beat that's in that movie, every single moment that was in Infinity War, I remember. And I remember leaving the theater wondering, like, what the hell? What are they going to do? And to know that there's a sequel and know that, some characters I'm like, okay. I don't want to spoil it, but I feel like everybody's seen this movie, but whatever. So, relating that to Endgame, holy crap, man. I cannot wait. That they've got to figure something out how to do this. Is Captain America going to die? Is Iron Man going to die? Are all the, Gen 1 Avengers, the original crew, are they all going out? Is Chris Hemsworth coming back as Thor? Is Thor going to make it? There's so many questions I have that don't get answered, and we've gotten a little glimpse of what's going to happen, and we still don't know. In the trailer, we saw a little bit, nothing else. We finally got a title. That's about it. And I'm totally cool with that, man. You don't need a trailer for this movie. You could probably tell how much I'm talking about it. I'm ready to see this freaking movie. Don't even do any promotion. You don't need to. Disney and Marvel have all my money. Just, you're printing money at this point. Get me into that theater. I cannot wait. And it's such a weird time to be alive. Such a great time to be alive. If I told, 8-year-old me that's watching, the Spider-Man cartoon that, oh, when you're in your 20s, you're going to see a lot of these superheroes team up like they would in a comic book and fight bad guys. And it's going to be freaking awesome. I don't know what I would do. I'd probably be like, wow, what a great time to be alive. So then after that, I get a little bit of a reprieve. And then May 17th, John Wick, Chapter 3. I'm in. I remember seeing the first John Wick. Everybody was talking about it. And I saw trailers of it. And I'm going to be honest, I wasn't super into it. I'm like, I thought I thought Keanu Reeves' time had passed as an action star. Yeah, whatever. We saw him in The Matrix. He's, Point Break. Those are great movies. But his time has kind of passed. Whatever. And I saw the trailers, like I said, and they were like, okay. And then I saw the reviews, and I saw all these, people on YouTube talking about it, and then my friends are starting to talk about it. And then I finally saw it, and I was like, oh, I am an idiot. I am completely wrong. Keanu Reeves is still very much a badass action star and can carry these kind of movies. And I was totally wrong. And I've seen that movie, first movie, 4 or 5 times. I have it on Blu-ray. It's one of those things where I can watch that movie a million times and still be entertained. Especially the nightclub sequence when he's fighting, oh, man. And what I loved about the first movie, and they carried over the second movie, and they'll probably do it in this one, is the combination, well, a couple things. I love a lot of things about that movie. But the combination of the MMA and the gunfighting, and also the fact that John Wick gets beat up a lot. He takes a lot of punishment. And that's kind of refreshing to see in these, these big budget action films, because you're used to seeing, Stallone and Schwarzenegger and these guys, they're big buff dudes, nothing can hurt them. But Keanu Reeves, he's not that big of a dude, so when he gets hit, and it's painful, and you feel, and the action is so visceral and so raw. And then Chapter 2 comes out, and I'm like, how can you make that better? How can you get even more over the top and make it more extreme? Oh, they find a way to do it. And then the scene in Chapter 2, which if you haven't seen it, muff your ears because you're going to love it. Because they mentioned in the first movie that he killed, I think it was 4, they said 4 dudes with a pencil. He straight up murders a dude with a damn pencil in this movie. And it's so awesome and it rocks. So now Halle Berry's involved in the third movie. And now what we've seen from Chapter 2, everybody's after this dude. I don't know how they're going to tell this story. But if you can't tell already, I'm in. I will be there day one. You are printing money. I'm going to see it. That's going to be a drinking game for this episode. You're printing money. But yeah, I don't know at all what's going on with that. And you know what? I'm okay with it. Bring it on. Same weekend, May 17th. I'll probably check this out. So it looks like going from the success of Bohemian Rhapsody, looks like we're getting another 70s, 80s rock star biopic called Rocket Man. I'm going to botch his name. Taron Egerton, that's his name. If I screw it up, I'm sorry. He's going to be playing Elton John, and based on the little teaser that we got, this is going to be a biopic, but they're kind of playing with it a little bit and playing with the story, and they're kind of making it a little bit more fantastical of a biopic than your straight run-of-the-mill kind of movie. I love Elton John's music. Much like Bohemian Rhapsody, I like their music. So that's already a plus. If I get to see them perform and play around in that world, cool with me. I would say Aladdin, that's May 24th, but I don't care. I actually really liked the Godzilla reboot in 2014. A lot of people thought we didn't get to see enough of Godzilla. It wasn't until the end of the movie. It worked for me. I mean, yeah, the human characters were kind of just fodder. I mean, that's what they are in the Godzilla movies. What I like is if they keep doing what they planned, if they keep going to the MonsterVerse idea, because the original idea was to have a Godzilla movie, then have the Kong Skull Island, which I really liked, super fun monster movie, and then have this Godzilla movie, and then set up Godzilla versus King Kong in the whole MonsterVerse. Yes, absolutely, do it. I got way too excited. I went to see Bumblebee, which the review will be up on loudopinionated.com. I went to see Bumblebee, and I saw this trailer, and I was geeking out over Mothra. It's so dumb to geek out about a giant moth, but I was, because I remember playing with the Godzilla toys, and this is what I want out of these movies. This is why I love the first Pacific Rim so much, and this is why I want more out of this, and it's just, they're taking my toys and just smashing them together. Awesome. Keep doing that. Keep taking my toys and smashing them together. That's all these movies need to be. And I understand you got to build a storyline. You got to have human characters, so it adds a little bit of stakes, this, that, and the other thing. I don't care. Keep smashing them together. Keep doing it. I'm excited for that Godzilla King of the Monsters. So it looks like June 7th is the release date for X-Men Dark Phoenix, which looks like it's going to be, which in all reality will be, the last Fox X-Men movie. I don't care. These are the only movies I want to see. I did finally see the trailer of this, because I'm recording this Friday, December 21st. Thursday, December 20th, the trailer for Men in Black International released, and I'm pretty into it. Yes, you could argue that when you watch the trailer, it's pretty much the first movie, but instead of Will Smith, it's Tessa Thompson and Chris Hemsworth. But I loved Thor Ragnarok, and I liked their chemistry, so I want to see them in a Men in Black movie. I'm someone who just really loves that franchise. I remember, and I think a lot of it could be nostalgia. But I remember watching the first one on VHS like religiously, because in the '90s I was a huge Will Smith dude. Like I was like everything Will Smith was in, I thought it was great. I wanted to see it. Even Wild Wild West, which I still love today as a really, and I know how bad it is. That was '99. It might actually end up on Jake's Rad Movie Show, but I've always had an affinity for Men in Black. Even though a lot of people don't like the second one, I thought it was, I didn't think it was bad. I just thought it was whatever. And then the third one I thought was really great. I thought it was really sweet. And now we're going international. We got a whole new team. Got Liam Neeson in it. I'm pretty into it. And even though it looks a lot like the first Men in Black, I think it's going to be the Force Awakens type move, where it's going to be a soft reboot, kind of like, hey, remember what we did with that first movie? Remember this? We're kind of going that direction. And I think if it's good enough to get a sequel, it's probably going to go more the Last Jedi route, which, a lot of people hate that movie. So we'll see for Men in Black, the future of that franchise. Toy Story 4. I'm kind of against it, mostly because, much like Men in Black, this is a franchise that was very much a part of my childhood and very important part of my childhood, which again probably could go in Jake's Rad Movie Show. Now that I think about it. Anyway, I thought it ended well enough with the third movie. I thought that was a good enough, closing the book on the story of Toy Story. That being said, the stuff I've seen, the little bit that I've seen for Toy Story 4, I can't say that I won't have a good time with it. It looks like it's going to be fun. We keep getting rumors that, like Tim Allen and Tom Hanks were like, they didn't want to look at anybody or talk to anybody after because there's such an emotional end to this movie. And what I'm thinking is, how can it get any worse than the ending of Toy Story 3, man? Like, you can't get any worse than that. Also, Key and Peele are in it. So, yes, keep putting Key and Peele in animated movies. It's always funny. It always works. Moving on to July 5th, we get Spider-Man Far From Home, the first movie after Endgame. So now we're going to see the direct trajectory. Well, maybe not direct, but we're definitely going to get an idea of the trajectory of the future of the MCU with this movie. I'm excited. I heard rumors that the reason it's called Far From Home. Now, originally, what I thought with Far From Home was like it's going to deal with space and him trying to get back to Earth, but it looks like it's going to be on Earth and he's going to be in London, and there's going to be things like we know Mysterio's going to be in it with Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio. Interesting casting, but I'm more excited that Mysterio himself exists in a live-action Spider-Man movie. Again, what a time to be alive, man. Like, that's such a crazy thing to me that Mysterio is going to be in a live-action movie. Could have been there with Spider-Man 4. Never forget, Sam Raimi. And this is interesting. We haven't heard a lot about it other than the initial casting news and that it's existing. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood looks to be coming out July 26th. I feel like I've been too harsh on Tarantino the last few movies. I think he's gotten really pretentious with his films, and understandable. When your movies are as good as his are, you can kind of be a little bit cocky about it. But I thought, well, I was like meh on Inglourious Basterds, which I know a lot of people think I'm insane for saying that, but it was meh for me. It didn't hook me like other Tarantino movies. Really liked Django Unchained. Had a great time seeing that movie. Thought it was pretty long, but I enjoyed it. And then I remember Hateful Eight. I liked a lot of that movie, but I also didn't like a lot of it. I thought that was a movie that was way too long. You could have cut off 45 minutes to maybe even an hour of that movie, and it would have been a better movie. So, that being said, I think this is an interesting enough story and an interesting enough cast that Tarantino telling the story of Charlie Manson is interesting, and I would definitely be into it. I think there's no reason why this movie shouldn't be good. I think it'll be very dark, and it'll have the dark humor that we know and love from Tarantino. And I'm wondering how it's going to work, because this is a big cast. I mean, you got Leonardo DiCaprio, Margot Robbie, Brad Pitt, Dakota Fanning, James Marsden, and Al Pacino. I'm into it. And the fact that they're talking about the Manson murders, as much as that feels like it'd be an overdone topic, an overdone storyline, it's always interesting. It just is. Moving down the list, September 6th. Jumping August right into September. September 6th, It Chapter 2. Now, if you've seen the first It movie, the remake, there's no reason why you shouldn't want to see this, because I'm really interested in how they do the second part of the story, because this is when the shit real goes down in Chapter 2. I loved the original remake. I remember, again, this goes back to me being an idiot. I saw the trailer and I was like, okay, it'll be interesting. It'll be all right. But I don't blame the movie. I blame years and years and years of really bad horror remakes to when I finally see a good trailer for a good one. I'm like, I don't know. Went and saw it. I saw it twice in theaters, and I loved it both times. I thought the camaraderie of the cast and the faithfulness to the book, and there's some weird shit in that book that you cannot translate to a movie. That's just facts. And I think that it will still. And you got Bill Skarsgård coming back. He was a great Pennywise, an amazing performance. I think you add that with James McAvoy, Bill Hader, Jessica Chastain, all really good actors, all very talented, and the same director. So I don't see why this movie wouldn't be great and be just as good as the first movie. We don't know. I don't know if this is actually coming out in 2019. This is kind of a cheat, but I want to talk about it. Zombieland 2. Yes, got the original cast coming back. This is a sequel I wanted for years. Since the first Zombieland movie, I'm like, please give me a sequel. I loved that. It was so damn funny. It's up there with Shaun of the Dead, because there's really only two really good zomcoms. And it was so brash in its style. It was something that felt unique, like pitch black dark humor that I just really love, and I hope it does come out this year. There's talks about it, so I really do hope it comes out in 2019, because I can't wait. I mean, I'm looking down the list of movies, and I don't know, the big one, the last big one that I can think of that I'm most excited about is Star Wars Episode 9. It's coming out around Christmas, because that seems to be the theme for Disney. They got to release their Star Wars movie around Christmas. I am in the camp, the very rare camp, I feel like, that actually liked The Last Jedi. I thought it was it played with the lore, and that's probably what upset people. But it did it was different, and that's what I liked about it. You know, everybody gets so upset because, well, you know, The Force Awakens was a lot like I loved it, but it was a lot like New Hope. But I was like, okay, fine. So then the next movie will get something different, add some twists to the characters and everything else. So then it comes out and people just, I don't know. And the movie is not without its criticisms. I'm not going to dispute that. There are some parts in that movie that even I was like, oh, God. So that backlash surprises me at what's going to happen with Episode 9, because now J.J. Abrams is back. We know that. We don't know anything about how this movie's going to play out. Know very little. But what we do know is it's probably going to be like Force Awakens. I just hope that it's not Return of the Jedi, because then it's like, what are we doing here? What's the whole point of this if it's just the same recycled stuff and then we have one different movie and we freak out about it? I don't care. I'm excited. I also love the arc that everybody's on. I think the way that we left things in The Last Jedi, especially with Kylo, I think Kylo got a lot more interesting in The Last Jedi, and his character development was a lot better. Because there were legitimate times when I thought he might be turning to the good side, you know, the light. I don't know. I can't remember if there's a light side of the Force. Point is, I think, you know, it was believable that he would turn. And that throne room scene with him and Rey in Last Jedi was great. I really hope they keep the idea that we don't know who Rey's parents are, and it shouldn't matter. Because I swear to God, if they say that she's a Skywalker, I'm going to rip my hair out. Because that is the dumbest, lamest cop-out that they could come up with for this movie. Just make it like it was in The Last Jedi. It doesn't matter. We don't care. We don't need to know who her parents are. Let's just focus on Rey, the person. I'm wondering how they're going to handle, because unfortunately with what happened with Carrie Fisher, I'm wondering how they're going to handle the Princess Leia stuff. I believe they said that her stuff was already done for Episode 9. So, that's just the thing. She's, in my opinion, she has to die. Not because Carrie Fisher passed on, but because it would make sense for the old generation to die off. Because that's the whole point of this trilogy, is handing it to this other generation. Because these movies just keep making money, and you know Disney's going to just drive into the ground, and there's probably going to be another trilogy after this. We're probably going to have 12 movies before, maybe even 20 before the time I'm dead. So it's intriguing because we know nothing. We know absolutely nothing about Episode 9. And I'm wondering how they're going to do it. And I hope they don't take the criticisms of Last Jedi the wrong way. And they take those criticisms that were valid and apply them and make it still be exciting and new to fans. Because I don't want Return of the Jedi, man. I want something different. I want something new. Last Jedi is great. That original trilogy is great. We don't need to see it again all these years later. We just don't. So those are the biggest movies of 2019, according to me. What's your biggest movies of 2019? Is there some that I missed? Because I'm sure there are. Let me know. I want to know what you guys want to see. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Loud and Opinionated. You can follow us on all the social medias. On Twitter, at Loud Opinionated. On Instagram, at Loud and Opinionated Pod. And on Facebook, Loud and Opinionated. I will be back sometime next week with the holiday. You're going to be spending time with your families. I'm going to be messing around, doing weird stuff. I'm going to be spending time with my family too. It's the holidays coming up, so I will be back some point next week, probably Wednesday and Friday, but you will get 2 episodes a week. I made that promise to you. It's going to happen. So thank you so much for being on this journey in 2018. It's only going to get better in 2019. I can't wait to talk about what we're doing in the new year. So yes, thank you so much. Be loud. Be proud.